my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit and every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course. And man, hope y'all had an incredible weekend. I was here at the studio just trying to finish up some things as I'm hoping to open our doors to the public in the next few weeks. So just tying up some loose ends. So I've been working like crazy recently, but it's all gonna be worth it in the end. And man, I'm on a bit of a self-reflective in a self-reflective mood today, I should say. And I'm really kind of, I don't know, I've been really into this podcast by Rob Dyrdek called Build with Rob, and he's all about like mind hacking and kind of like viewing, human beings as like sort of machines to a degree, not in like a negative sense, like, work harder, but the idea that you can continue to tweak your mind and tweak the way that you view things and optimize the way that your mind works and your body and all of it working in conjunction. And it's just had me thinking, and I've had this written down on my phone for a bit, but I thought it'd be good to kind of bring it to the pod because, as I've mentioned in the past, I think Life as a Gringo is oftentimes kind of my diary to a degree, and me just kind of being able to put certain ideas out there because I know that it may help others out. It may help because I know it might help other people. And this is kind of one of those episodes. I'm thinking I'm just going to do a long mi gente segment, kind of riff on this topic. But I've created kind of this thing I'm calling the success recipe, and it's a working title. I know it's a bit generic right now, but basically it is my list of things that I need or things that I need to do on a weekly basis in order to be in a good place mentally, right? To help maintain my mental health. And this is sort of based off of conversations I've had with people in my personal life. I think things I've stewed on in the past, topics we talked about in the past, like the mental health episode when we talk about kind of these trauma loops. And also I had recently made a switch where I had been in therapy for on and off for years. It's worked for me, but I'd been hitting kind of a wall with my therapy, or a ceiling, I guess would be a better way to say it. But I had been hitting that ceiling, and talk therapy just kind of wasn't working for me anymore. I felt like I was just kind of talking in circles with my therapist, and I wasn't really getting proactive tips on how to manage the things that I'm going through, or how to actually make them better in a way that I can kind of implement into my everyday life. And it was suggested to me that maybe I should, try having a life coach. And that's what I had switched to recently. I'm using an app called Coach.me, where you can, you think you pay like a weekly subscription. You get assigned a life coach, and you can meet up via Zoom and text and things like that. But my life coach has been, really, really good of just kind of suggesting different things for productivity, and also how to sort of alleviate some of that. Man, my brain goes crazy just thinking about all the things I could be doing that I should be doing, right? And I drive myself crazy, and that leads to depression, all of the above. So, kind of inspired by that whole journey, I created this list that I have that I call my success recipe. And I thought it'd be good to kind of start sharing that. And I thought it'd be good to kind of share that on the show. And for some people out there, it may be something they want to implement into their life. And I think it'd be important to begin to think to yourself, kind of what are the non-negotiables that you need on a daily, on a weekly basis that leave you feeling good about yourself, that leave you feeling good about life, that leave you feeling energized. I know for me, with kind of the holidays and just kind of getting back into the groove of everything, I've fallen off of the things that I know are kind of my essentials for good mental health. And I've been, to be truthful, I've been kind of up and down when it comes to my mental health over these last couple of weeks. And I recognize, that it's because I've kind of fallen off the wagon a bit with the routines and the things that I know are essential to kind of helping me optimize my mental health. So I wanted to talk about that today on the show to, maybe kind of bring something new to anybody who's never thought about things like this, or or those of you who maybe need a reminder to kind of get back on the horse, get back on your game as far as the things you know that are essential to you feeling good about yourself. So we'll talk about that on today's show. Just a quick little thing. I want to say thank you so much to everybody that's been listening to my new podcast, The Street Stoic. It's been incredible to see the response so far. We charted in I think the top 30 of music podcasts, in the entire world in our first week. So that's been huge. I really appreciate all the love we've been getting on that. If you haven't checked it out yet, I really would appreciate it. The Street Stoic, we're combining, like self-help with, inspirational hip hop quotes and lyrics with, ancient Stoic philosophy and just trying to bring these worlds together and man, just, trying to give you that daily shot of inspiration. They're really quick episodes, 10 to 15 minutes. So it's something you can just easily kind of listen to while you're getting ready for work or whatever it is in the morning and get on with your day. So definitely check that out. Like it, subscribe, review, all that stuff. Wherever you listen to podcasts is greatly appreciated. Now, with that said, man, let's just get into this long mi gente segment about, productivity hacks, mind hacking, and my success recipe. Mi gente. All right, so I have this list in my phone. Anybody that's not watching the video version of this, I'm reading off of my phone. And if you do want to see the video version, you can go to the Cultura podcast YouTube. We have Life as a Gringo, the video version of the pod, all up season 1 and season 2. But a lot of these things are based off of kind of this meeting I had with my life coach, as I was saying, and it's kind of just a few different realizations. I think sometimes you just need to talk it out with people, right? I think we oftentimes have the information, but we're moving so fast in life, and so many things are being thrown at us that we're kind of just caught up in like the windstorm of life, and we don't have the time to slow down and kind of realize what's happening or what we need. And also, I think just sometimes having somebody to bounce ideas off of makes you feel a little bit less crazy, right? Especially somebody that you're kind of paying to be there. They have no choice but to really intently listen and kind of give you feedback. And people who do this for a living is always, helpful. So again, after talking to my life coach, I came up with these list of things that, I kind of have to implement into my both daily and weekly life and life as a whole in order to really feel good mentally. And precursor to everything, I don't think you're going to be able to hit every single thing every week. I know that I definitely haven't been able to given my schedule, but I know that the weeks that I'm doing at least the majority of this stuff, I definitely have felt far better mentally. And I think that mental health, not to get too deep into it, because I know we've done a couple episodes on mental health, but I think, those of us who struggle with depression and things like that, anxiety, it's always going to be there, right? And I think that that's something I've heard from any professional that I've talked to, and I have a really good psychologist right now who I've been talking to, and I've always viewed the idea of depression being there for the rest of my life as this very like ominous thing, as this very sad thing that I'm gonna have to deal with, and it makes me angry. But I think there is hope, right? There's light at the end of the tunnel, and you just have to realize that it takes like proactive work, right? That this is something you're going to have to work at, for the entirety of your life. And I think even people who don't necessarily suffer from clinical depression or anxiety, like happiness is something you have to work at. I've talked about that a few times on the podcast, but it all is active work. We don't just sit down and think, okay, I got the house that I wanted, the partner that I wanted, and the job that I wanted. Now I no longer have any sort of unhappiness. It just doesn't work that way. That's not the way we're wired. We're wired to solve problems, right? So the brain is constantly looking for problems, and the brain is constantly maybe I'm not a doctor in any way, but for me, from my own experience, like to me, it seems like in the brain's journey to look for a problem to solve, because it needs that sort of that interaction of solving a problem. It sometimes creates things or brings shit up from the past, just as a means to kind of have that friction that needs to be solved, right? So for me, finding ways to give myself the most clarity, to sort of gamify, which is something Rob Dyrdek talks about, like gamify the idea of happiness, and coming up kind of with this almost to-do list where it's like, if I'm checking these things off of my personal to-do list, my success recipe to-do list, that is me solving a problem essentially, and maybe it quiets the brain a little bit from looking for issues that it has to solve. So I'll kind of just get into some of the things from my list and break down a bit of I think why I think they're important, or why they're on the list, or how I came to them, and we'll just kind of riff. I think today's episode is going to be a lot of just riffing, maybe a little more than usual. But the first thing I had written down on this list is time off and breaks are essential. And this might seem like a very obvious, like, duh type of thing, but for me, as somebody who's highly motivated, high achieving, you know, I always viewed time off and breaks as something I'll do when I've already found success, right? And my life coach and other people in my life have said this, but sometimes it has to be beaten into your head a few times. But the way it clicked when my life coach said it was, that this time off and these breaks, like, you have to have a different view of them, in your mind. Like, you have to recognize that for you, time off and breaks are actually something that leads to your success. And instead of it being sort of this burden and something that takes you away from, your creativity, or takes you away from achieving your goals, you have to view them as an essential part of achieving your goals, right? Because at the end of the day, if I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, I'm not doing my best work, I'm not my most creative, right? So taking time off, taking time for myself, taking a day a week for myself, taking a break in the middle of the day, taking a nap, whatever it is, whatever I'm feeling, playing, I have arcade machines in my studio, and taking a break and just go playing, with one of them, for a little bit. Like, taking that break allows me to kind of clear my head and be better for whatever it is that I'm trying to work on. And again, that's a new revelation for me, because I always sort of viewed needing breaks or needing time off as something, that was weak, that I was above it. My own personal brand was the person who was working 24/7, essentially outworked everybody, and while that's, been beneficial in certain ways, I definitely recognize where, like, I was lacking because I was tired. I wasn't putting in the best work in certain areas because I was too exhausted to do so. So for me, it's recognizing that and reframing time off, or reframing a break, from being something that takes me away from my goals, and looking at it now as something that actually aids me in achieving my goals has been a huge breakthrough for me. I've been even trying to take, like, Fridays off now, and, like, I haven't been able to do it completely just because there's so much to do, but making Fridays a really easy day and just doing essential tasks, and that's it. Not trying to have a to-do list, not doing a day where I wake up super early and have to get into the studio early and start tackling things. Like, nah, Fridays are my day to catch up on personal stuff, generally speaking, and whatever essentials I have to do, I take care of them, and that's it. Now, another thing that I wrote down here on this list is flow state is sacred and needed daily. Now, flow state, for anybody who hasn't kind of thought about this or not familiar, flow state is like when you get into that mode, and we've all done it, we've all gotten into it in different ways, and different things do it for each and every one of us. But flow state is kind of when you end up losing track of time, right? Like, when you're working on something that you're interested in, or whatever it is that you're focused on, and next thing you know, you're like, damn, an hour passed by and I didn't even realize it, right? And you kind of were just in this zone. That's flow state. And what I've recognized for myself is I need to get into this daily. And the time that I'm able to do it is going to vary, but this is an essential part of my day. I always feel better after I've done a task that got me into flow state. So for me, it's like doing something creative. I try to do an hour to hour and a half a day of uninterrupted creative time, right? And you have to kind of sometimes ritualize, like, getting into a flow. Like, for me, I sit at a particular desk in my studio. I turn down the lights and I just have, like, my mood lighting. I have some lo-fi playing in my headphones, and I just kind of fuck around with whatever creative task I'm interested in that day, and I'll end up losing myself for that hour, whatever it is. And when I get out of it, when that time is up, I feel a sense of relief. I feel like I tapped into something special. It's almost like it feels like, not to be dramatic, but it's like it's almost like, I don't know, there's something spiritual about it. I was gonna say it's like being amongst God, but I feel like that's a little bit dramatic. But there is something incredibly spiritual about getting into this state of mind where you are unaware of anything else in the world and you're just hyper present on the thing that you're working on and you're getting lost in it. And there's something really beautiful about that. I know for me, again, it brings this whole sense of relief and calm when I'm done with it. And I have to make sure that, like I said, it's viewed as something that is sacred. That's why I wrote down flow state is sacred, because it has to be uninterrupted. My phone is on do not disturb. I'm in a quiet place. People around me know, do not bother me for this hour and a half. I just need to be uninterrupted and working on this thing. And it's definitely something I haven't been able to implement on a daily basis like I want to, but I know that it is essential. I'm trying to do it. And it's definitely something that aids me in my mental health. Now, the next thing I wrote down was community is essential. And this is, I think something I've always inherently known, haven't been great at, though. I think if you look at, what are the classic sort of things that have lasted the test of time, and it's things like religion, church and things like that. And these are community-based ideals or organizations, right? And it's because we as human beings are tribe-like, creatures, right? Since the ancestry of our indigenous ancestors, we were a part of a tribe, we were a part of a community, and we want to feel like we are a part of something, And I know with Life as a Gringo, I think we have an incredible community here of people who listen to this, and I'm looking to expand it. I think that, even beyond that in your personal life, one thing that I've always sort of taken for granted and I'm not proud of it is friendships. I've always put my career first, and I've been terrible at managing friendships. And, it's something that I recognize I need, and it's something that I recognize that I've felt like it was lacking, and I keep falling off the wagon with staying in touch with my friends. And I hate to say that, but this is like a good way to hold the mirror up to myself and a reminder to be better today. But I know that I was feeling that towards the end of this last summer, and I made it an effort to reconnect with some of my oldest friends, and it felt amazing to kind of have that connection again, that sense of community again, and of course I'm lucky that I have my girlfriend. I'm in a relationship where I have somebody that I connect with on a deep level and provides me with that. But I think you can't rely on your significant other for everything, right? I don't think that it's healthy for either one of you. So that's my sort of recognition of my community around my career and my interest has been incredible. But at the same time, I need to have people in my life that I can just shoot the shit with, and it doesn't have to do with anything necessarily too serious. And these are just people I get to connect with in person. I think that's still an essential thing. As much as I believe in like the digital age and I've embraced it and love sort of being in my own cave to a degree, I've recognized that, that physical connection with friends and being around them is really so important. It's such a beautiful thing. Now, the next thing that I have on the list is playtime is essential. Weekly, if possible, more. And this is something I took away when I did my personal growth retreat, the Hoffman process. And this is one thing they implement, not giving away too much of it for anybody who wants to go through this, but one of the final things they do is give you this sort of playtime, right? And they try to tap into your inner child. And I can just remember, at the end of the day, sort of laying down and feeling the best I had felt in years, maybe ever. I don't know. It was a crazy, obviously, week of growth and things like that. But like tapping into that playtime, I felt like I reconnected with a part of myself that I had lost a long time ago. I have this vision of myself as a little kid, very outgoing and the sort of, the life of the party as a little kid, and somewhere along the way, I began to develop, insecurities and began to get very shy in front of crowds and things like that. And my goal when I went to the Hoffman process was kind of to reconnect with that kid. And I remember laying there after kind of this play day that we had and feeling, man, like I've found him, and it was just an incredible feeling. And I think again, for me as somebody who's always been goal and career driven, I've sort of thought of the idea of fun and play and recreation as sort of something that happens, um, kind of with whatever random free time I may have, but it's not a priority, right? And what I realize is that, it is actually something I need to make a priority because, again, it's one of those things that the relief it gives me, the good feelings that it gives me, actually make me better for every other part of my life. And even as adults, we need to have that same playtime we had as kids, right? I think that society tells us we have to sort of grow up and that things are childish and this, that, and the third. But I don't think that's a healthy mentality. I think that, again, it's kind of the wisdom of children and they've got it figured out. Like that's why they're, for the most part happy and are living sort of their best life because they have, the essentials figured out. They're doing what's important, what they're feeling. And I think all of us need that time to play, to be silly, to have fun. And as adults, it's easy to sort of view that as not important. But I think, what I've recognized for my life on this journey with mental health and this journey of optimization and things like that, like it's essential. Just like that idea of time off and breaks, like playtime is essential. Being silly, being, stupid, doing things that you enjoy that have no real value aside from the fact that they make you happy. Like those things are really essential to your life and you have to implement them if you truly want to give yourself that fulfilled feeling, and as I'm reading these things, if you're sort of like me, somebody who battles depression or anxiety, begin to think to yourself, like, which of these things am I regularly doing and which of them am I not? Because I'm mentally going through like my like sort of last few months or whatever. And as I'm reading this, I'm like, fuck, like no wonder my mental health has been such a roller coaster ride. Like I'm slacking on so many of these things, right? Like I'm almost ashamed to admit that, I've been probably, man, not doing more than I've been doing, if that makes sense. Like the stuff on this list that I have been regularly doing is far less than the stuff that I haven't been doing. And playtime, it's like a very obvious thing. Like, yeah, no wonder you're feeling off because you're not taking the time to like do things outside of your job, outside of work, that bring you joy. And man, and let's see, flow state. And let's see, another one that I wrote down here was play money is a part of building wealth, right? And I want to dive into this a little bit where I know for a lot of us, money is a very sensitive issue. I have a lot of money trauma that I'm struggling with, till this day. The fear of losing money, the idea that I'm wasting money, the idea that I can't spend any money if I actually want to build wealth and generational wealth, which is the goal, and the fear that every time I spend $1, I'm taking myself further and further away from that goal. But what I kind of realized, with my life coach and other people in my life, again, that in order to really stay on your goals and to stay disciplined, like you have to have some sort of relief from it as well. You can't be miserable all the time, right? It's kind of like being on the world's worst diet where you can't eat anything. Like, yeah, maybe you're gonna reach your goal of a certain weight or a certain physical appearance, but like you're also not living a life that you're enjoying, right? Unless you're doing this professionally, like that's your job is bodybuilding, whatever it is. Like there's no real, joyous outcome aside from the physical. There has to be some sort of balance there. And I think in the same way of when it comes to your diet and health and things like that, like building wealth is a part of that as well. If you don't allow yourself to enjoy the fruits of your labor at times, like it's going to be really miserable while you're on this journey of saving money and trying to make money. You have to, responsibly allow yourself to enjoy it. And that's something I had to remind myself of as well, is don't guilt yourself because you decided to take a vacation that year, that all of a sudden, oh my God, I can't believe I took a vacation. Now I'm like $1,000, less money than I had before or whatever it is. The reality is, again, it's like that time off, that break is essential, and having the ability to spend some of that money and realize, oh man, like, this is what I'm working for. It's the ability to do this more often. It's the ability to do this on a bigger level, to experience more, right? And I think that that's always a good reminder of like why you're being so disciplined, why you're working so hard. And that's why the idea of play money being an essential part of building wealth is something I added to this list. And I'm reading from my success recipe. Again, this is my list. I think I want you to take from it what makes sense for you, add things to your own list, whatever it is. And I have this in the notes of my iPhone. So like, I want you to kind of do the same thing, when this episode is over, whatever it is, think about what's essential to making you happy. Now, I want to read a few more things I have on this list that I think have been really incredible for me and a reminder of what's important and what I need to do to stay healthy mentally, And another thing I have on this list is deep, passionate, and vulnerable conversations and check-ins are energizing and needed weekly, if not more. And this is something, again, I've been kind of slacking at a bit, but I wrote this down because I've noticed that, when my girlfriend and I get into these really just like passionate conversations and are really vulnerable and are like analyzing the shit out of things, and especially when I was kind of having a bit of that breakthrough when it came to like the trauma loop, that was something that was really impactful for me. We were just having a lot of conversations about our own stories and trying to analyze and figure things out. And like, I felt energized after those conversations. I felt really good about them. And they pushed me to reflecting on different aspects of my life and being present. And I think, having somebody that you can have really incredible conversation that challenges you to think, that also gives you a safe space to express yourself fully and is non-judgmental, I think is incredibly important. And again, for me, it's been really energizing, and it's definitely something I need to, create some space for again and make a priority. Now, next thing I said on this list is not all conversations need immediacy. Create a system to table thoughts and then address when you have the headspace. So this is the idea that like, oftentimes people in our lives or even ourselves sometimes, like they get this idea in their head and they feel like they have to share it with you now. We have to have this conversation now. And I think the reality is like, no, you don't have to have this conversation now, right? We're all adults. We all should be able to control ourselves and understand that if now is not a good time to talk to this other person, we should be able to table the conversation for when is a better place, right? And for me, I've always had an issue with like telling people no. I've been a bit of a people pleaser. So I'll like interrupt my flow state to have a conversation, or I'll stop what I'm doing, or I'll tell somebody, yeah, I have the space to talk about this, even when I know I'm not in a mentally great place, or I have a really crazy day, but I'm trying to please everybody. And I've been trying to get better at this. And it's not in a rude way. It is not in a not caring way, not having empathy. Of course, there are going to be dire circumstances that you just need to be there for somebody, and that needs to trump everything. But generally speaking, not all conversations need that immediacy. If I'm on, a really strict deadline, and I know that if I don't hit it, I'm going to be feeling really bad about myself, I'm going to be feeling even more anxious, then I need to say, hey, I don't have space for anything right now. Let me finish this, and then we can, talk about it. I'll get back to you. Or if I'm in just like on one, if I'm in a zone and I'm just like fucking crushing something and I'm really into it, then I need to kind of make space for that. Just like I said with the flow state, like I'm on do not disturb. Sorry, don't bother me for the next hour and a half, like unless it is an emergency. Anything else can wait. And being comfortable telling people that in your life and making that space, I think, is essential for not letting the outside world sort of dump its shit on you and derail you from what you know is important for you. Now, the next thing is daily meditation practice to touch base with your feelings. Follow up with journaling or conversation with someone you trust. And I've fallen off the wagon with this a little bit, but I know that when I'm doing this regularly, I feel really good about it. And I try to do it every morning. My life coach also said that, if there's a day where you just don't feel like doing it and there's something else burning in your brain, as important as meditation is and journaling and all that kind of stuff, like you also don't want to just sit there and force yourself to do something when you don't have the mind for it that day, right? When your body is bringing you somewhere else, and you're going to end up like killing the energy that you have towards something else just to try and stay in this strict routine. So that's been something I've been trying to remind myself of. But generally speaking, having a daily meditation practice, I usually do like 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes a guided meditation. Sometimes I'll do the binaural, beats, the sounds, and then journaling after, and kind of like just getting ideas and thoughts out of my head and whatever's, on my mind, freely journaling, not with the intention of ever reading it back necessarily, but just like doing a mind dump essentially, and putting it out there. And then, at times if I write something or think of something that I think I really want to expound upon, that I find to be interesting, that I think could be beneficial, I'll have a conversation with someone I trust, usually my girlfriend, and kind of be like, hey, I was stewing on this, what do you kind of think of this idea? And we'll kind of maybe dissect what I'm feeling or what I've been trying to work through. And another thing I said is, if your mind is hyper focused on a task or idea, address it, then return to the present moment. So this is kind of what I was talking about meditation, where it's like, if you wake up and you are just fucking like on it, you are inspired, you are energized towards a specific task or something, like go take care of it. Don't feel like you have to sit here and stick to this strict routine, or sometimes if you are, my life coach brought this up. Sometimes if he's having trouble sleeping and he's like just obsessing over an idea, for him, it's better just get out of bed. If it's 3 a.m, go work on that idea and just kind of get that energy out, and then go back to bed. But, stop trying to fight against what your mind is naturally wanting to do, obviously within reason, and obviously if it's something positive. And even, again, when you interact with people in your life, like if you're sitting there watching TV with your significant other or whomever, and your mind is just like, man, I'm so focused on this one task. I just, I can't stop thinking about it. Sharing that with whomever you're with and saying like, hey, can I go take 30 minutes? I know we're spending some time together, but my mind is all over the place. If I could take 30 minutes to go knock this task out, I know that I'll feel a lot better. I'll be able to kind of just be present and be here in the moment. And generally speaking, anybody who loves you is going to be okay with that. And again, that's putting yourself first. That's putting, your own your own health as a priority, and understanding, again, like what makes you tick and what is going to bring out the best version of yourself. None of us want to be in a state of mind where we can never be present and be enjoying the moment with the people that we love, right? So in order to sometimes get to that place where we can be giving them the best version of ourselves, we have to understand what sort of hacks we need to do, what we need to take care of mentally in order to then be able to sit down calmly and give, again, them the best version of ourselves. And sometimes that is just taking care of that task that is burning in your mind, or scratching that itch, whatever it might be. Now, this one is obvious. It's physical movement daily. I've been fucking terrible at this. I just get so caught up in my schedule that I don't have time to work out or whatever it is, especially now it's cold as fuck here in New Jersey. So it's easy to make an excuse that I'm not going to go for a walk or ride my bike or whatever it is. But it's something I'm trying to remind myself of. Physical movement daily is, important not only for your body, but your mental health, the dopamine that it releases, all of the above. Now we're getting towards the end here of a few things left on this list, but daily mindful, quiet, or still time spent in nature or outside. And of course, as I'm talking about that, it's freezing over here, so it's difficult to do. But I've also been trying to make it a point to, if I go walk my dog, and I'm better at this at times than others, but, walking my dog, not bringing my AirPods, not listening to like a book or a podcast, but instead just like getting lost in my surroundings, paying attention to the sights, the sounds, being still, and just allowing myself to be quiet and get lost in whatever ideas might be running through my head, and just kind of working through them and thinking about them. And sometimes some of my best like ideas for creation come from just those quiet times, that quiet walk, or quietly sitting in the backyard as my dog is running around. Is I think really, really important. And especially in a world where there's so much noise. Social media is noise. There's podcasts, there's books. We're hyper connected. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you can connect your device to listen to something and to watch something, whatever it is. And sometimes it's best to just kind of turn all that stuff off and just listen to yourself for a little bit. And it's good to do this, I think, in the middle of the day, to kind of like take a break from work or whatever it is that you're doing, and just have that calm, that still time in nature. I also say clean space, clear mind. This is something that my relationship has brought up to me and reminded me of, and it's true. I'm somebody who I'm a bit messy just because I'm always moving around and doing different things. I don't have time to create systems and stuff like that. And then I end up, living a life that's a bit frustrating, right? I'm looking for I don't know, my headphones and I can't find them because my place is a fucking mess. And then I'm getting frustrated. And then I'm trying to, find a USB cable because I want to like plug in my keyboard because I want to like work on an idea I had for, whatever, a song that I want to do for fun. And then that turns into this whole frustrating journey just to be able to sit down and work on this thing, right? And it's because I didn't create a system that I kept my stuff organized. And even just, I noticed in my home, like the days that it's clean and organized, I walk in there and it feels calm. I feel a sense of relief. I feel a noticeable change in myself. And it's definitely something I'm realizing as I get older. Like, wow, this has a real impact in my mood and how I carry myself throughout the day. And I'm trying to do the same thing in my studio. It's hard because I'm constantly creating things and moving around to different spaces and utilizing different spaces. But I've been trying to keep that up because I know the feeling of when I walk into my studio in the morning and it's clean and everything's in its place, and I just appreciate it that much more. And I'm that much more inspired and energized to do things, and I'm not fumbling over, having to move something just so I can sit down at my desk and work on my computer. And again, that like barrier to entry is always the worst. Like, it's always why a lot of people talk about productivity hacks, like for content creators, let's say, like have your camera and lighting always set up so that you literally just have to turn it on and you can start recording, right? It cuts away that time that you can have that self-doubt of like, oh, I don't feel like setting this up right now. I'm too tired. I'll do it later type of thing, like whatever you can do to optimize and create the path of least resistance towards the things that you're trying to accomplish, I think is always a good idea. And a clean space is a part of that. And the last thing I'll have on this list is, ironically, as I read off my phone, but have a weekly social media Sabbath. So for me, Sundays, I don't go on social media. And it's a little change, but I've noticed it being, incredibly beneficial. I'm, not as concerned with what the hell is going on, when, in the world, or I'm not like as obsessed with having my phone by me on a Sunday. I'm a little bit more present to what's going on around me. I'll sort of recognize like, oh man, I just like spent 2 hours and I didn't even like know where my phone was, and that's okay, right? I know this sounds like simple and something stupid, but like social media, particularly because of what I do, but I think for any of us in the era that we're living in, is a huge part of our everyday lives. And, it's incredibly beneficial. I love it, because I think it provides so much opportunity, but it also, again, is so much fucking noise, and it's easy to just, get lost in it and sort of blank out and not be present to what you have in front of you, and to sort of just space out and detach from the world. And that's, not a life that I want to live. I have problems being present. I have problems with not detaching in general. So social media is just a really easy way for me to do that. So I try to be really mindful of that. I would love to be able to do it a little bit more, but it is tough with, work stuff, and maybe that's just an excuse. But definitely at least one day a week, I try to do Sundays where I don't look at my social media at all. I have limited phone use, and I'm just like in my present life, my regular life, just trying to enjoy and be as present as humanly possible. Now, that's my success recipe. It was a little bit lengthy, but again, that's for me. And as I read it, as I kind of mentioned, like I'm realizing that I've fallen off the wagon big time with staying consistent on those things. So I love that I have brought it to the table, and it's been a great reminder for me. And I hope that, when you finish this episode, I suggest that you try to write up your own success recipe. Maybe take some of the things that I talk about that were helpful, add it to your list, and then create things that make sense for you. And I'll kind of table that real quick, so we'll kind of talk a bit more about that in our conclusion stew. Time for conclusion stew. All right, so picking up where we left off, again, I challenge you, when you're done with this podcast, you have the notes app in your phone, whatever it might be, you want to write it down. Start thinking about what you can do to optimize your own mental health, your physical health, your everyday life. What recipe do you think makes sense for you that would bring you the most amount of happiness and fulfillment on a regular basis? Would help you offset if you suffer from depression or anxiety like I do. Think about those different things, and again, you tweak it as needed, right? Try it out for a week. Try hitting some of those goals, those milestones that you have for yourself, and start off slow. Don't bombard yourself with a ton of shit and then like be mad at yourself that you couldn't fulfill this success recipe that you had for yourself that week. Like, start slow and start seeing what has a real positive effect for you, what has a positive effect on you. There are obviously a number of different things. There are different studies. I know there was one study that I read where they talk about every human being needs like 90 minutes a day of creative time, and just like getting lost, essentially that flow state time. So just something to keep in mind, that is kind of an essential thing, just like, doing something physical every day, be it walking, exercising, whatever it is. Those are kind of the essentials, but then also kind of work around what makes sense for you in particular, you personally. What are you sort of lacking? It really is just kind of listening to yourself a bit more, and then trying some stuff and noticing, oh wow, I felt really good that day when I did this task. When I did this part of my recipe. That's something I want to implement on a daily basis or a weekly basis. That energized me. Like, figure out the things that are energizing you, that you can easily implement into your regular life to kind of hack, the negative things that come up in our brains, in our minds, inevitably, right? I think that's a big part of mental health. It is a big part of kind of the trauma that we've all gone through in our lives, and like how they replay as loops, in our heads. And again, our minds are always looking for some sort of issue to solve. That's just the nature of the way that they work. So it's kind of the idea of like, in idle hands are the devil's something. I can't remember how the fuck that goes, but it's the idea that if you're sitting around with nothing to do, issues are going to be created. Your mind is going to create some sort of issue to solve, right? So I think this is sort of the way to hack that, where you're giving yourself tasks that need to be solved, and it, kind of gives your mind less time to roam around in that negative space of where it's going to be looking for things for you to be upset about, or reminding you of things that you should be upset about or that have happened to you that you need to live with. And this isn't me trying to tell you to just ignore all your feelings and things like that, but I think there is like a healthy point of understanding what you're feeling or reliving past things. And then there also gets to be this really just toxic point of you're just punishing yourself for past mistakes or past experiences. And even though you recognize that, they aren't your fault, or you've worked through them and you've forgiven the people, you're just reliving the same emotions, at that point, because your mind is automatically going back to those feelings, because it's like, again, a loop. It's a muscle memory thing. So, by giving your mind a new task to achieve, by giving it, these sort of list of things that bring it joy and give you that dopamine and those feelings of fulfillment, I think that it offsets the time that your mind has to run away with itself and create issues that it doesn't need to, or that aren't really there anymore. Now, I hope that made sense for y'all. Let me know. I always love hearing from y'all at DJ Dramos on Instagram. I love hearing if this stuff makes sense for you. I appreciate everybody who DMs me and lets me know that a certain episode, made a lot of sense for them or impacted them in a great way. So I love hearing that kind of stuff. Any questions, you can always hit me up as well. But man, I have to get back on my wagon and my success recipe. And I definitely challenge you to create one for yourself and do your best to stick with it. Gamify it, like Rob Dyrdek says, where maybe you at the end of every week you can check off all the tasks that you did or didn't do, and like try and top yourself each week, right? If I did 8 out of 10, I'm at 80%. I want to get to 90% next week, and then see, okay, I got to 100%. How many weeks in a row can I do this? Gamify it in a way that keeps you motivated to wanting to do it. And actually, that's a suggestion I just came up with that I'm going to keep for myself. That I'm going to do moving forward, to gamify. How can I do this on a regular basis and hack my mind into being obsessed with doing it? And man, yeah, I don't know. And man, yeah, that's gamifying the brain hacking, and all these different things that we talk about, we hear about, in this world, is just kind of tricking your brain into happiness, because that's kind of the way it goes. Happiness, again, is something you have to work towards and constantly work towards and consistently work towards. And I think this idea of a success recipe is a really good way to kind of achieve that. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for listening to today's episode. Again, check out my new podcast, The Street Stoic, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are, a fan of this podcast, like, subscribe, comment, leave us a good review. All that stuff helps out. And I'll catch y'all on Thursday for our Thursday Trends episode. So then, stay safe. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.